great that Barbara and Cristóbal spoke before I did, because they already mentioned lots of things I wanted to talk about the book, so about my research. So it's great that they kind of did the job for me and everything is connected, which is the greatest thing. So first of all, I wanted to just make clear or just explain why I ended up doing this research on film flashbacks and not on any other thing. And so the thing is that I wanted to study some film-related, not film-related, but some filmic device, but from a linguistic perspective. And we, Inés and I, we found out, and alongside Cristóbal, of course, and other researchers, that flashbacks are very rich, multimodally speaking, and at the same time, they are the flashback is a very stable device in film already. So that, and of course, that richness was the asset, of course. So that's why I ended up studying flashbacks. And as you know, and as Cristóbal said, it consists is the classical analepsis that consists of narrative leap from the present to the past. But as we will see, when you have this blend of viewpoints and other things in film flashbacks, you get to have the present and the past at the same time in some instances, and some others play with other things. So, well, of course, if you think of, I'm sure that you think of flashbacks and you think of the typical dissolve or the fade, right? Like, oh yeah, it's the thing when the screen gets blurry and then they get you to the past. And I was like, yes, that's the flashback. I was always answering that question. But then I found out that there are many other ways of cueing a flashback, and many creative ways of constructing a flashback. We'll see some of those. So I'll play a couple of examples first, because I was thinking that if you go to a presentation on film flashbacks, at least you want to see some scenes, right? Classical example from Sunset Boulevard.
Yes, this is Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning. That's the homicide squad, complete with detectives and newspapermen. A murder has been reported from one of those great big houses in the 10,000 block. You'll read about it in the late editions, I'm sure. You'll get it over your radio and see it on television, because an old-time star is involved, one of the biggest. But before you hear it all distorted and blown out of proportion, before those Hollywood columnists get their hands on it, maybe you'd like to hear the facts, the whole truth. If so, you've come to the right party. You see, the body of a young man was found floating in the pool of her mansion, with 2 shots in his back and 1 in his stomach. Nobody important, really. Just a movie writer with a couple of B pictures to his credit. The poor dope. He always wanted a pool. Well, in the end, he got himself a pool. Only the price turned out to be a little high. Let's go back about 6 months and find the day when it all started. I was living in an apartment.
So as you see, classical dissolve, and then the voiceover narrator, and just compare it with this other flashback from the Bourne Identity, 2002.
You move, you die. Bourne, gun down. In there.
Okay, so what do you want?
Treadstone.
You better take a look around. There's not much left.
Are you Treadstone?
Am I Treadstone? Me? What the hell are you talking about? He's lost it. You better start filling in the blanks here, because I thought we were on the same side.
Whose side is that?
Boy, you don't know what you're doing, do you, Jason?
You don't have a goddamn clue.
Who am I?
You're U.S. government property. You're a malfunctioning $30 million weapon. You're a total goddamn catastrophe. And by God, if it kills me, you're gonna tell me how this happened.
Why are you trying to kill me?
What happened in Marseille?
Why are you trying? You sent me to kill Wambosi.
Kill Wambosi? Yeah, we can do that anytime we want. I can send Nikki to do that, for Christ's sake. Mr. Wambosi was supposed to be dead 3 weeks ago. He was supposed to have died in a way where the only possible explanation was that he'd been murdered by a member of his own entourage. I don't send you to kill. I send you to be invisible. I send you because you don't exist. Now, I want to know what happened in Marseille.
I don't remember what happened in Marseille.
Bullshit! This is unacceptable, soldier. You hear me? You failed.
Unacceptable.
You failed. You failed, and you're going to tell me why.
I can't tell you. I don't
You
remember.
brought John McCain
goddamn
alive.
thing.
You put together a meeting with Wambosi. You found the security company. You broke into the office. For Christ's sake, you're the one who picked the yacht as a goddamn strike point. You picked the boat, picked the day, you tracked the crew, the food, the fuel. You told us where. You told us when. You hit out on that boat 5 days. You were in, Jason. You were in. It was over. No, you do remember. Don't you?
Yes, okay. So as you see, you can tell the huge difference between both. One very classical narrative, the second one is very flashy, the editing, the camera movement, everything. Well, believe it or not, they both fit in the same cognitive pattern and the same kind of flashback model, which is the sort of the amazing thing, right? And that is precisely what we wanted to do in this. So sorry, because there's no way to stop it from doing that. So the aim of this research was to analyze and describe all the cognitive mechanisms behind any kind of flashback scene in a classical narrative style. Of course, I didn't consider any kind of art film or anything very experimental, right? But that was the goal, and I took a naturalistic cognitive approach. That is, I didn't consider film as some kind of language-like system that we learn how to decode, we learn how to understand, but as like a device, a multimodal medium that actually taps into our general cognitive and perceptual abilities. That was what Cristóbal was saying, that's the basis. Then of course we learn some things. We take the best out of our natural abilities, but that's the basis is natural. And this image comes from, Cristóbal used to tell me that what we wanted to do was to lift the hood of the car and look at the engine and see how it works. And that's what I did in this research. It's interdisciplinary, as Ines was saying, because it is actually located at the intersection of these main three areas of knowledge. There's cognition, and specifically blending theory, which is the one I applied, the theory I applied for this study. Narratology, of course, and then in narratology plus cognition, there you have Barbara's research on I mean, her book, The Language of Stories, which applies blending theory to literary narratives. And then, of course, there's film theory, but there's this not so new now, but this trend of cognitive film theory that brings together those two fields also, which is not a theory per se, cognitive film theory, but it's more of a research program with a multidisciplinary spirit and looks to answer for very specific questions and to try to explain films. That's why I think my research really fits into this field of knowledge. And so it's a model of analysis based on blending theory. I won't explain the theory in like very much in depth. Cristóbal gave many of the fundamental ideas. Blending theory or conceptual integration theory is based on Gilles Fauconnier's mental spaces theory, and actually that's the first one. Gilles Fauconnier, he passed away very recently, sadly. And then from his theory on mental spaces, he worked with Mark Turner, who we are happy to have here today, connected. I saw him.
It's live. I mean, you have a picture and you have him moving at the same time. Yeah. So this is already, you know, blended. Mark.
Yes. And so they both developed the theory, which they explain at length in their book, The Way We Think. And so basically what they explain is how we human beings, we construct and comprehend meanings, but in a very broad sense. And they speak of conceptual integration as a process or a number of cognitive processes which are non-conscious, but which are prompted by different forms of human expression. That is, we have like some sort of an iceberg, and you see we see products of conceptual integration, but everything that's going underneath, which is, it seems simple, but it's not, and it's basic and it's complex. It's all going down here. This is a model, like a basic representation of a conceptual integration network with all the input spaces, input mental spaces, they're called mental spaces, and elements in them which are connected to each other, counterparts, there are projections, and then the essential thing, of course, is that we have the emergence structure, which is that new meaning that comes out from the integration from the network, right? In Fauconnier's words, we're not conscious of these processes. What we are conscious of, to a high degree, is language or other kind of form on one hand, and experiencing meaning on the other, right? We have form and meaning, and as soon as we have form, we also have meaning, with no awareness of the intervening cognition. That is why, for us, many things, but of course, films are easy to understand. But that doesn't mean that the cognitive activity in our minds is simple, right? But they are very easy for us to understand, of course. A very an everyday example of this would be text messaging. As Cristóbal was explaining, that we can inhabit two different moments in time because of our thanks to our cognition. This would be a case. We imagine your text messaging, and then in this network, in this conceptual integration network, we have maybe you and then your friend, and then you're sending a message. But imagine you write here in Pamplona at 10 o'clock in the morning, and your friend is answering in London at, I don't know, 11 p.m. But it doesn't mean that, and then you have, of course, you need to add a scene of joint attention. This scene would only be possible if we blend all these concepts and have a blended joint attention scene, because this is a basic idea I started with in my research. Joint attention implies that we know together, that we are looking or we are attending to something together, to people. Like right now, we're jointly attending because we're all paying attention to the screen, let's say, right? So, and we know we are attending together and we communicate about it. So that's essential. That idea is essential, but it needs to be taken beyond in an integration network, because we are, what's the place, what's the time? We are beyond here and now in a text message conversation, right? So we need all these ingredients and the joint attention basic scene, but we take it beyond. So this is fundamental to understand films and to understand flashbacks. Why? Because in every film you have a joint attention triangle where you have, you are the viewer, and then there's the camera. The camera is also the product of a blend, but I explained that in the book. It would take too long. It's also the product of a blend, and viewer and camera together attend jointly to the narrative taking place, to the narrative mental spaces. This concept, we will get to that very soon, is Barbara's narrative version of mental spaces. So we have a scene of blended joint attention every time we watch a film, right? And then when we get to flashbacks, well, we can have the character joining us, either jointly attending or attending in parallel. And we have this kind of scene. You can see it now in this example from The Help. You will see how the point of view shot, the point of view structure, is going to take you as a viewer from the character to what she's looking at, then back to the character, and then when she goes to the object, we are in the past. So this joint attention scene with this, like the activation of different narrative spaces, is what makes the flashback possible. Right, so you see, she stops, she looks, classic point of view structure, right? Character, object, and we go back to her. And then when we're back in with the bench, it's the past already, right? No other kind of transition. And we're not lost. We're not lost as viewers. That's because we are very much used to jointly attending. And there's this other example to see that it can be creative, that it's the sound, it's the mother's laugh that cues the flashback.
Did she really?
Well, anyway, Marianne Raymond started to just scream, just cry, right? It was crazy. We got so drunk that we couldn't talk to each other. It was the last day.
The voices are a bit echoed, but you see.
Did she really?
Right? So different variations, creative variations of the same device. Let's see if I can turn this on. So as Barbara was saying, there's a compression of viewpoints, and perspective here is understood in a broad sense. Of course, in that joint attention triangle, 3 different viewpoints are also blended. The camera's viewpoint, your viewpoint as a viewer, and then the character viewpoint if it's involved in the flashback if we have a memory flashback, that is, right? And then we may also have characters doubles perspective, which is what Cristóbal was talking about. Because when you have a character introducing the flashback by his or her narration, and then you get to the past, you get the perspective from the present, which is given you by the narration, the voice over narration, and then you see the past, and you experience the past directly, and then you have those 2 viewpoints blended. You see Forrest Gump.
I bet you could walk all day in shoes like that and not feel a thing. I wish I had shoes like that.
My feet hurt.
Mom always said there's an awful lot you can tell about a person by their shoes. Where they going, where they been, I've worn lots of shoes. I bet if I think about it real hard, I could remember my first pair of shoes. Mama said they'd take me anywhere. She said they was my magic shoes.
All right, Forrest. Open your eyes now.
Right, so, oh, sorry. Viewpoint compression, which is, I mean, it's a full chapter is devoted to viewpoint compression in the book. So it's essential, particularly that blend of present and past perspectives, which you can access simultaneously, right? And then other essential components, which is what I really like talking about, because I think Barbara's research is wonderful. And when I found her book and what she said, what her how she applied blending to narratives, to literature, I thought this is perfect for my flashback. So she talks about narrative mental spaces, not just basic mental spaces, but narrative ones. And I specifically talk about the present space and the past space in flashbacks. And then there are, of course, space builders, which are those cues that activate the past narrative space. They may be visual, verbal, or auditory. We'll see some examples now. And some of those can also take the form of narrative anchors, and then they evoke spaces, they build links, like the song As Time Goes By in Casablanca, which has this function of, it's a narrative anchor throughout the film. Verbal space builders are, I mean, very basic, evident, like this one in the Godfather Part 2, right? It says who the character is, place, and then the year. And then, of course, you know that they are taking you back in time. Then for visual flashbacks, you may have an object that is like the bench we just saw in the help. That's a visual space builder because the character is looking at the object, and then visually that activates the narrative space of the past. And then auditory space builders, it's the one in Ordinary People, the mother's laugh, that would be an auditory space builder. I'll just play the one in Ray because it's another example of an auditory space builder that activates the narrative space of the past and fully immerses there. And we are all the time in this joint attention triangle that the camera is guiding us as viewers to different narrative spaces, and through space builders, it's guiding us to the past, right? You see, right? And so sorry. It's the music that is guiding him to recall, because now in the scene in the past, there's this man playing the piano also, right? So, but it's amazing how creative also flashbacks can be. So just conclusions, my conclusions, right? In this model of flashback analysis that I propose, the multimodal cues that are employed in flashbacks do not contain in themselves the meaning of the past, right? The meaning of the past is not in the cue, it's not in the music, it's not in the I don't know, in the bench that this girl sees. Those are only cues that prompt for mental processes, right? Those activate mental processes, but they don't contain in themselves the meaning, the flashback meaning. So then where does the meaning come from? How do we understand flashbacks? Well, we understand them through the activation and construction of narrative spaces, then establishing multiple connections between those spaces and the elements in them. And then those conceptual integration processes lead to the emergence story, which is also Barbara's proposal for this, which I think is great. And this emergent story it's only in the viewer's mind. This idea we have of, oh, this film tells this story and it talks about this, and that's in our mind. That's not, it's the film is the form that prompts this in our understanding, right? So it is only in this higher level blend that flashbacks make sense and films make sense and narratives make sense and lots of things make sense to us, right? Art and other things. And then what Cristóbal wanted to hear about, which is future research. Where can we go from here? So for people who want to work on this, this is only a hypothesis, of course, this blended theory application. And we need experiments with spectators, with eye tracking, with gaze patterns that psychologists can run. Then everything regarding subjective time, of course, we could talk about this, Maria. Temporal perception in memory, how humans reconstruct the passing of time subjectively. Then, of course, comparative studies with literary retrospections would be very interesting too. How also, I didn't get into emotions. I did a research which we could call of cold cognition, and then emotion would be like the next step to, or the other ingredient to take into account. From flashbacks, we could go to study film transitions, for instance, and then of course visual literacy, which is I think it's a big topic. I think it's a great topic because although, like I said, we don't learn how to understand movies, we do need visual literacy, especially for critical viewing. We need to learn how to watch movies critically. That's not just movies, but art and any kind of product. And this is all, but I had a song and it's not working. So this is all I had to say. I wanted to play Casablanca.
Well, your fans are, showing how they liked your presentation. Are there any comments, questions, suggestions, either from the room, either from Zoom?
I have a request. This is Mark Turner, and that is,
Hi, Mark.
if you're going to share this recording publicly, let me have the link so that I can stick it on the blending website, blending.stanford.edu, next to the picture of the book and the link to go and purchase the book from Routledge. So give me the promotional materials and I shall humbly serve as your flack.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Cynthia Cabanas raised her hand. She's very welcome to activate her audio.
Hello.
Hi, Cynthia.
Yeah, I'm Cynthia Cabañas, actually, to Spanish as well. So I couldn't put the ñ. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was amazing. I am for sure going to buy the book. And I want to tell you that I got into your work because basically I'm a PhD candidate. It's my first year. And I am working on dramatic irony and in film cognition as well. So I'm doing sort of like a similar, I'm analyzing dramatic irony right now in different cinematic work. And obviously there's a part of dramatic irony that's also related to flashbacks. So obviously that's how I got a bit into like the work that you're doing. Actually, I'm going to do a presentation in which I also talk about Sunset Boulevard, because obviously this movie starts telling you in the beginning, what's going to happen, and then does the reverse story, which then is going to tell you all the events that lead to the death of the character. And I just wanted to tell you that I think it's very, very interesting that you're doing this kind of like film cognition work in which, and I was actually going to ask you, but you already answered to this, whether you were going to do behavioral experiments to prove this hypothesis that you are presenting here, which are super interesting. My background is in psychology, and neuropsychology. So like, I'm obviously very interested in the more cognitive side to this. And I wonder if you have any sort of like hypothesis of brain related, and whether you would want to look a bit more into how these cognitive processes work in the brain as well. Is that a thing that you're interested in?
Yeah, you mean related to dramatic irony, or?
No, related to flashbacks and like the cognitive processes that you talk about, attention and mental and time comprehension, compression and viewpoint compression as well.
You mean, can you repeat the question then? You mean psychology related concepts?
Yeah, if you're like interested in looking more like in a more like brain related perspective, in a sense, for example, I put you like a very basic example. Do you think there could be a part of the brain that, if damaged, could not allow you to understand flashbacks, for example?
Right. I don't know about that because I'm not a neurobiologist or a psychologist, but that was just a suggestion for people working on those areas that may be doing eye tracking studies and things like that. Maybe, well, I'm sure that. I think they're yeah, Ines, I think they are pushing us out of the building.
Really? Oh.
But
you have 15 minutes.
The computer just told me something. So
come to cyberspace. Come to cyberspace.
No, I think everything will switch off at 9, not.
Yeah, I think that's what it was saying. Yeah, like.
By the way, they are sitting in an intelligent building, and everything sits down at a particular time and whatever. But go ahead, Adriana. Well, Adriana, I mean, you could that kind of experiments. I mean, we have there is a partner team working at ICS where we are based, working with fMRI and neuroimaging, and they are quite eager on what Adriana did, because it's aesthetics, and it's the aesthetics pre-experience not being involved. And I think one of these psychologists was part of the PhD jury, by the way. So I don't think this is kind of a short-term project or short, I mean, in the very, very near future. But of course, I mean, this could be done. Sorry for skipping into the conversation, Adriana, but yeah.
No.
That's great, because you know a lot about the mind-brain group, Ines, so
yeah,
you know what they're doing.
So, I mean, they look forward to collaborating with Adriana, by the way.
Yeah, that's it.
I definitely look forward to collaborating with you as well, if you ever need like any kind of like talking about this, because it's so interesting and so related as well. And then going like completely to the opposite side, to the film side. Do you talk in your book about editing techniques? For example, I noticed that in many of the examples that you put in regarding to flashbacks, they use this kind of like L cuts, where the music, as you say, is like introducing the next scene. Do you actually like identify this kind of editing?
Yeah, I talk about editing. I talk a lot about point of view shots, like the one I showed you. And yeah, every example is different. So in every example I analyze, I get into the what's actually happening there. But yes, I do talk about editing, mostly about point of view shots, which is amazing how many flashbacks, memory flashbacks are introduced by point of view shots. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your answers. And just to say that I think it's an amazing research and really well written. I've read your article only for the moment, but I think it's really, really well written.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Remember, we still have 5 minutes left before. Barbara, can you? Okay. Great. Thank
Just
you.
one thought, when you were showing those clips, which were of course fascinating and just made me remember some of the things you said, what stuck in my mind is the Bourne Identity part, where there is a flashback but you're still looking at the flashback from different perspectives. So you're looking at what he remembers, like the view of the ship. But I was really puzzled about that moment where you're looking at his face as he's aiming the gun at the man's head and hesitating what to do. Why do you need that? Oh, well, you need that for emotion, right?
Right.
So why didn't he shoot the man? You need that particular viewpoint from, well, some other narrative space where you need to understand why he got himself into the situation in the first place. I think it's just an example how many amazing things are happening in every single scene like that. You've uncovered so much about the flashbacks, but I think when you say the next step is going to be, let's look at emotions. Yay! I think there's going to be a lot to do just with how narrative spaces are used and how viewpoint is used to construct an understanding of an emotional response from the character, which is what I'm struggling with in texts. It's the same huge unresolved problem. How do we talk about subjectivity and experience, emotional experience, especially in those various modes of cognition? And I just want to say thank you to Cristóbal for the term cognitive aesthetics. Yes, I've been waiting for this. And I know how to call the weird things that I sometimes do. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Anyway.
So thank you so very
Last
much.
words, if you wish. Thank you very much. Okay, Javier, some people are turning their cameras on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for being there. Wow, so nice. We can't see people in the room, but thank you for being there as well.
Thank you,
I would like to
that
thank,
came.
yeah, I mean the fan team.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your interest, of course.
I think Adriana and I would like to thank also ICS, the Institute for Culture and Society, and Routledge, for supporting, hosting, spreading the news about this book launch as well. I mean, they were very supportive. And thank you all for being there. More news to come. I mean, because Mark Turner promised to spread the video, the recording if you wish. Feel free to email Adriana. I mean, she's the person. She's the main person today. And thank you for being here. We will end up this session right now, if that's not too rude. Thank you, Barbara, for being here. Thank you, Cristóbal, for joining us as speakers today. Thank you, Brad Jackson, Javier, Cynthia, Daniel, Milagros, Nila, Iñaki, Xiaofang, Lady, Iñaki. And we had around 30 people in the room and more people in the physical room. So thanks and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what it means. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.